Hello, scholars, and welcome back to weeks 9 and 10 of Applying Philosophy to Modern Global Issues. Thanks for your hard work and creative contributions over the last few weeks to our discussion of the differing approaches to achieving social justice in India. I thoroughly enjoyed reading Catherine Boo's Behind the Beautiful Forevers with you. For the final 6 weeks of the course, we will be turning to project-based assignments. For this 2-week unit, you will be working with a classmate to compare and contrast the ways that criminal justice is implemented in the poorer neighborhoods of your communities. Since the 1970s, America has been fighting a war on drugs, with aggressive legal and policing strategies implemented during the 1980s and 90s. During the Reagan and Clinton presidencies, Congress passed Stern, 3 strikes and you're outlaws, which made the possession or distribution of drugs into felonies. Get convicted of 3 felonies and you're going to a prison for a long time. Although drugs still proliferate in our society today, levels of violent crime in America did decline during the 1990s and 2000s. But this decline has been accompanied by a vast rise in the number of people, particularly African American men, incarcerated in our prisons. The raw numbers are startling. Just look at the graph below. The number of people in prison has risen from about 500,000 in 1980 to over 2.2 million today, a 400% increase. The incarceration rate in America has grown to over 700 per 100,000 people, which leads the nations of the developed world by a huge margin. And of the 2.2 million people in our prisons today, nearly half are African American. In the poorer sections of most of our cities, where the economy has been hit hardest by the flight of blue-collar jobs overseas due to globalization, the drug trade has flourished, and African American men have been prosecuted and convicted of drug-related crimes in huge numbers. By some estimates, 1 in every 3 African American men will serve time in prison at some point of his life. The policing strategies used to combat the drug problem of America have led to a spate of instances of police brutality and the use of lethal force against African American men, from Ferguson to Detroit to New York City to North Charleston to Baltimore. Communities have been rocked by the deaths of African Americans at the hands of police. In my hometown, Baltimore, the death of Freddie Gray in police custody sparked riots across the city in late April of 2015. And since that time, an epidemic of drug-related violence has afflicted our city. What is to be done about the current state of crime and punishment in America? Politicians from across the political spectrum have called for reform of our drug laws, reduction of the number of nonviolent drug-related convicts in our prisons, and overall reforms of our prison system. During this unit, we will examine the complex problems which have led to the situation today. We will consider the consequences of the war on drugs in each of our own local communities. We'll make recommendations about ways to reform our approach to the drug problem and to the prison system itself. How can philosophy help us achieve these goals? Too often, debate about controversial topics arouses passions which inflame the conversation, forcing people with different views to default to partisan positions. This is where a philosophical approach can help. To inform our discussion of crime and punishment in America, we'll study the philosophical foundations of our current justice system. How and why do we determine who should be punished? What should be the purpose of incarceration? How do we assimilate criminals who have served their time back into the general population? Finally, you'll do your own research into the relationship of law enforcement with minority communities in your own hometown. You'll compare your findings with a partner, a classmate from a different city, and draw conclusions. For this project, you should also interview some person who has expertise on the topic you and your partner have chosen. This person could be a member of your school community, a friend of your family who is a lawyer or a social worker, or someone you could contact and arrange to meet. Please pay close attention to my directions about how to set up and conduct an interview on the following page. To get started, please watch the following TED Talks by Alice Goffman and Michelle Alexander. Alice Goffman is a professor of sociology at the University of Wisconsin. She wrote On the Run, a fascinating study of the relationship between police and African American young men in a rough neighborhood of Philadelphia during 2010 to 2012. Michelle Alexander is a civil rights lawyer and recent professor at Stanford University, who is the author of The New Jim Crow, an excoriating expose of the mass incarceration of African Americans during the drug war. If you have any questions about the upcoming project or any concerns at all, please feel free to contact me. I'm available to Skype with you or to instant message at any time. That's all, and I'll see you all online.